It starts with a feeling you can't quite shake. It's 2 a.m., the room is dark, and you're staring at the ceiling, replaying a conversation in your head. Maybe he didn't text back. Maybe he made a comment that made you feel small. But underneath the specific details, there is this heavy, sinking realization. I have been here before. Different face, different name, maybe even a different city, but the exact same hollow feeling in your chest. The confusion, the inadequacy, the sense that no matter how hard you try, you're just missing something. Why do smart, capable women find themselves stuck in these loops of disappointment? And more importantly, when you feel like you're drowning in insecurity, how do you actually break the surface?
It's the question of the century, isn't it? Because on paper, everything looks fine. You have the career, the friends, the life. But in the quiet moments, there is this persistent ache. We often treat these relationship disasters as bad luck. We say, I just have a broken picker, or there are no good men left. But if we really want to get honest, and I mean brutally, spiritually honest, we have to look at why the disappointment feels so familiar. That familiarity is the key. It's not just bad luck, it's a pattern. And patterns, by their very nature, are designed to be broken.
That's a hard pill to swallow, though. To say it's a pattern implies that we are choosing it. And I think a lot of women listening would say, I did not choose to be ignored. I did not choose to feel inadequate. It feels unfair to place the burden of the pattern on the person who is getting hurt.
I'm glad you pushed back on that because that distinction is vital. When I say it's a pattern, I am not talking about blame. Blame is toxic. It keeps you stuck. I'm talking about resonance. In psychology, they call this repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to recreate past trauma in an attempt to finally master it. But if we look at this through a spiritual lens, which is really where the deep healing happens, it's about energetic alignment. If your foundational belief about yourself, rooted perhaps in childhood or a past traumatic breakup, is that you are too much or not enough, you will subconsciously gravitate toward partners who confirm that belief. You're not choosing the pain consciously. You're choosing the familiarity.
So the partner isn't the problem. They're just, what, a mirror?
Exactly. They are a mirror reflecting your own unhealed wounds back to you. And that is terrifying, because if you simply break up with the mirror but don't heal the wound, you'll just walk down the street and find another mirror. The face changes, but the reflection, the insecurity, the feeling of walking on eggshells remains the same. The work, and it is deep work, is to stop polishing the mirror and start healing the person standing in front of it.
Let's dig into that unhealed wound concept, because the prompt for this episode came from a place of deep confusion. The listener described feeling inadequate and experiencing one disappointment after another. That doesn't feel like a conscious choice. It feels like an assault. When you're in that headspace, you don't feel powerful enough to heal anything. You just feel weak.
That feeling of weakness is actually a symptom of the root cause. When we talk about inadequacy, we have to ask, where did that seed get planted? Babies are not born feeling inadequate. They're born expecting their needs to be met. Somewhere along the line, maybe it was a parent who was emotionally distant, maybe it was a chaotic household, or a first love who betrayed you. You learned that your needs were a burden. You learned to shrink. Psychologists talk about schemas or attachment styles, specifically the anxious attachment style, where you're constantly scanning for abandonment. But spiritually, this is a fragmentation of the soul. You have separated from your own worth.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you right, the relationship turmoil is just the smoke. The fire is actually this internal separation from self-worth.
Precisely. The relationship is the symptom. The root cause is the trauma stored in your emotional and spiritual body. And this is why so much standard dating advice fails. You can read all the books on how to get him to commit or rules for texting, but those are band-aids. If your energetic vibration is screaming, I am afraid you will leave me, No amount of strategic texting will fix it. You have to go to the root. You have to clear the trauma so you can actually show up for yourself.
That phrase, show up for yourself, we hear it a lot. It's almost become a buzzword. But what does it actually look like for a woman who is currently crying in her car because he canceled a date? How does she show up for herself in that moment?
It's a great question because we need to move from theory to practice. Showing up for yourself in that moment means pausing the reaction. Usually, when he cancels, the reaction is, "What did I do wrong? Is he seeing someone else? I'm not pretty enough." That is the wound speaking. Showing up for yourself means taking a breath and saying, "I feel disappointed." That is valid, but his behavior is information about him, not a verdict on me. It is shifting from self-blame to observation. But, and this is the big but, doing this alone is incredibly difficult when you are in the thick of it. You're trying to read the label from inside the bottle.
Right, because your brain is wired to panic. You can't just think your way out of a nervous system response.
Exactly. You are fighting your own biology and your own history. This is where the role of a guide, specifically a mystic or intuitive healer, becomes non-negotiable for some people. We live in a very DIY culture where we think we should be able to fix our psyche with a journal and a podcast. But deep emotional and spiritual trauma creates blind spots. An intuitive healer, someone who has been doing this for decades, doesn't just listen to your story. They look behind the story. They look at the energy you are carrying. They can see the root cause that you have buried so deep you forgot it was there.
It's interesting you mentioned that blind spot. I was reading about the concept of the shadow self in Jungian psychology, which overlaps heavily with what you're saying. The shadow holds all the parts of us we deny, including our own power sometimes. Do you think that's what these women are disconnected from, their own power?
100%. When you feel insecure, you have outsourced your power. You have handed the remote control of your emotions to someone else. You're saying, if you smile at me, I'm good. If you frown, I crumble. A spiritual healer's job isn't to tell you your future, though that can be part of it. It's to help you retrieve that remote control. It's about clearing the confusion. Often women come in feeling like they are going crazy. Am I imagining this? Am I too needy? A skilled intuitive cuts through that fog. They can say, no, you aren't crazy. Here's the blockage. Here's the trauma from 10 years ago that is vibrating in this current interaction. Let's clear it.
So let's get specific about this clearing. You mentioned trauma isn't just in the head. It's spiritual and psychological. How does someone start to build that stronger foundation you mentioned earlier? If the house is built on quicksand, how do we pour the concrete while we're still living in it?
You start by identifying the repetitive cycle. That is step one. You have to name the demon to tame it. Is the cycle, I choose unavailable men? Is the cycle, I sabotage it when it gets too close? Once you identify the cycle, you have to look for the origin point. This is where working with an expert is crucial. You might think the origin was your ex-boyfriend, but an intuitive might look at your energy and see that it actually stems from a period of instability in your childhood, or even a generational pattern passed down from your mother. We carry things that aren't even ours sometimes.
That's fascinating. Generational trauma is becoming such a huge topic of research now. The idea that anxiety can be inherited.
It is, and if you are trying to fix a generational wound with a modern dating app strategy, you are going to lose. You have to heal the spirit. Building a better foundation means clearing out that old debris, the beliefs, the trauma, the accumulated disappointments, so that you have a clean slate. When you clear that energy, you stop vibrating at the frequency of desperation and start vibrating at the frequency of wholeness. And guess what? When you are whole, you attract other whole people. You stop attracting projects and fixer-upper partners.
It sounds like a relief, honestly, to stop hustling for love and start attracting it. But I want to go back to the woman who is feeling confused right now. Confusion is such a paralyzing state. It's not just sadness, it's disorientation. She doesn't know which way is up.
Confusion is often a sign that your intuition is warring with your ego. Your intuition knows something is wrong, that this person isn't safe or this situation isn't right, but your ego, or your wounded self, wants to stay because it's afraid of being alone. That friction creates the confusion. The advice I would give to her is this: stop trying to figure it out with your logical mind. Your mind is the thing that got you into the loop. You need to drop into your intuition. And if you can't hear your own intuition because the noise of anxiety is too loud, borrow someone else's. Reach out to a guide who can hold the lantern until you can see the path again.
That's a really beautiful way to put it, borrowing someone else's lantern. It makes asking for help feel less like a weakness and more like a strategy.
It is the ultimate strategy. We are not meant to heal in isolation. We are wounded in relationships, and often we must be healed in a relationship, even if that relationship is initially with a therapist, a mentor, or a spiritual healer. The goal is to reach a place where you are your best self, not your perfect self, but the self that honors your own needs, that sets boundaries without guilt, and that knows, deep in the bones, that you are worthy of consistency and kindness.
I love that definition of best self. It's not about having a six-pack or a CEO title. It's about boundaries and self-worth. But Alex, practically speaking, if someone is listening to this and nodding along, feeling like we are reading their diary, what is the first step? They want to clear this up. They want to find that root cause.
The first step is a decision. You have to decide that you are done with the pattern. You have to get angry enough at the cycle to want to break it. Once you have that resolve, you need to reach out. There is a resource specifically for this kind of deep, intuitive work. For the listeners who resonate with this idea of a mystic, intuitive approach, someone who has decades of experience helping people navigate exactly these kinds of blockages, there is help available. You don't have to guess at your root cause.
And I think that's key, the decades of experience. You want someone who has seen the roadmap before. Where can they go?
If you are ready to find out why things are the way they are and what specifically needs to be done to clear it up, you can connect with a specialist at psychicreadingexpert.com. It's about getting a reading that isn't just a prediction, but a prescription for healing. You can book online there, or if you want to speak to someone directly to start that process of building a better foundation, the number is 855-708-2768.
I'll repeat that just so everyone has it, because sometimes you need to write it down to make it real. Psychicreadingexpert.com or 855-708-2768. It's really about having a conversation that goes deeper than just he said, she said.
Right. It's about moving from what is he thinking to who am I becoming. When you shift that focus, the confusion starts to lift. You realize that you have been the protagonist of your life all along. You just forgot your lines for a moment. A good healer just hands you back the script.
That shift from external to internal is so empowering, but it's also scary, because if we are the protagonist, we are responsible. There's a comfort in being the victim, isn't there? He did this to me is painful, but it's also simple.
Oh, absolutely. Victimhood is a very comfortable coat. It's heavy, but it keeps you warm. It absolves you of the need to change. If it's always them, then you never have to do the scary work of setting a boundary or walking away. But the price of that coat is your happiness. The price is this perpetual feeling of insecurity. When you take the coat off, you might feel naked and cold for a minute. That's the vulnerability. That's the confusion phase the listener asked about. But that is also the moment true growth begins. You are trading the false safety of victimhood for the true safety of self-trust.
Self-trust. That's the antidote to insecurity, isn't it? It's not confidence that he will love me. It's confidence that I will be okay regardless.
Bingo! Insecurity thrives on the idea that your survival depends on his approval. Security, spiritual security, is knowing that you are whole on your own. When you approach a relationship from that place, you don't tolerate disappointment after disappointment. You spot the red flag and you honor it. You don't try to paint it white. You say, this doesn't align with the foundation I have built, and you move on. That is what it means to show up as your best self.
But getting to that level of clarity, that's the journey. It's not a light switch.
It's a process. It's an excavation.
You are digging through layers of past emotional, spiritual, and psychological trauma. That's why I emphasize the decades of experience part of the helper. You need someone who knows how to navigate the dark tunnels of the past without getting lost. Someone who can help you see where this is coming from. Is it a childhood wound? Is it a spiritual blockage? Once you know the source, you can apply the cure. But you have to be brave enough to look.
I think a lot of women feel like they've been looking, but they're looking through the wrong lens. They're analyzing the texts, stalking the social media, trying to find the answer in the external data. You're suggesting the data is internal.
The external data is a distraction. It's noise. The internal data, your intuition, your energy, your history, that is the signal. When you clear the noise and tune into the signal, the positive advice naturally follows. You don't have to force yourself to stay positive. You become positive because you are no longer weighed down by the baggage of the past. Positivity isn't a mood, it's a byproduct of healing.
I love that distinction. We are so often sold toxic positivity. Just smile more, just manifest it. But you can't manifest a healthy relationship if your internal magnet is set to reject.
Exactly. You have to change the magnet. And that is what spiritual healing does. It repolarizes the magnet. It clears the trauma that flipped the switch in the first place. So to the woman listening who feels confused, who feels like she's just in this endless loop of disappointment, please know that the confusion is temporary. It is a signpost pointing you toward the work you need to do. Don't run from it, turn toward it. And if you need a hand to hold while you walk through it, reach out.
That's a powerful place to land. It's about taking agency back. We've talked about the psychology, the spirituality, and the practical steps. But I want to close on the idea of hope. Because when you are in the cycle, hope feels dangerous. It feels like setting yourself up for another fall.
Hope without action is dangerous. Hope with a plan is powerful. The advice I want to leave people with is this. Your past does not dictate your future, but it does inform it until you heal it. You have the capacity to build a life that feels steady, secure, and joyful. You are not broken, you are just blocked. And blocks can be moved. Whether you do that through therapy, meditation, or working with a mystic intuitive like the one we discussed at psychicreadingexpert.com, just take the step. Do not settle for the confusion. You deserve the clarity.
You are not broken. You are just blocked. I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people today. It changes the narrative from there is something wrong with me to there is something in my way. And like you said, obstacles can be moved.
They can be moved, dissolved, and cleared. You just have to be willing to start the work. And remember, showing up for yourself is the most romantic thing you can ever do. It sets the standard for how everyone else will treat you.
Alex, thank you for breaking this down with so much depth. It's easy to give superficial dating advice, but getting into the soul of the matter, the root causes, the trauma, the spiritual foundation, that's where the real change happens. For everyone listening, if you're feeling that call to dig deeper, you know where to go. psychicreadingexpert.com or 855-708-2868.
Thank you, Chloe. It's always an honor to serve and help guide people back to their own light.
If this conversation struck a chord with you, or if you know a friend who has been stuck in that same confusing loop we talked about, send this episode their way. It might be the nudge they need to finally turn the page.